All right. How's everybody?
Great.
You ready for a lively discussion today?
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm co-teaching this course. I'm Saladin Allah. Give you a little background about myself. My background is education, actually early childhood education. So I taught pre-K for quite a bit. I'm also director of community engagement at the Niagara Falls Underground Railroad Heritage Center. I'm a public project coordinator for our public art through the Niagara Falls National Heritage Area. So if you have the opportunity to go down Main Street to see all the public art, I coordinate all of those projects. I'm also part of the International Civic Society Working Group for the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent with the United Nations. My father used to call me an octopus because I got a lot of different arms. And I'm always striving to figure out what I can do to learn it well enough to teach it to somebody else. I wanted to kind of start things off by talking about why this subject matter is important, and I wanted to reframe it a little bit. How many people have ever seen that word biomythology before? You mind sharing what it means?
Yeah, it's basically just like a mythologized idea of like what a race is supposed to be.
Absolutely. And in order to mythologize it, you combine actual biography, history, and mythology together, right? So usually when we have this idea of what white supremacy is, I wanted to kind of reframe it. This is a person by the name of Neely Fuller. He actually published a book, and it's an excellent book I would encourage you to get. It's called the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept Textbook. So I'll leave it up here for a second if you want to write this down. And he's a foremost authority in articulating what white supremacy and racism actually is. This is one of his quotes. If you don't understand racism or white supremacy, what it is and how it operates, everything you think you understand will only confuse you. Let me give you some examples of what I actually mean. Let's first start off with one of my working definitions of what white supremacy actually is. Number one, it's a culture. So when I say culture, I'm talking about the sum total of all of your people activities. The way you define your diet, your style of dress, how you define your human relationships with each other, your relationship to the planet. Every aspect of what you say and do is a part of your culture. And it is a culture of mythology that reinforces the false idea that the global minority, those who are classified as white, are superior. It's also psychopathic conditioning and toxic belonging that centers whiteness, which tells us who has value, who doesn't, what has value, what doesn't, in ways that reinforce a white racial hierarchy of power and control. Does anybody have any questions about what any of that means?
Okay, this isn't a question, but I want to say thank you for providing this definition. So my senior thesis is actually about the creation of the narrative of whites. The addition, it already existed before this point in history, but how the white exiles from Saint-Domingue coming here, they started spewing all their white supremacist bullshit, and that added a bunch of flames to the fire that was already American white supremacy. So these definitions just helped me a lot, so I hope you don't mind if I use them.
Oh, definitely. And like I said originally, if you don't understand what this is, everything else will confuse you. Many of you, maybe at this age, may think that you are white. But if you have a conversation with your great-grandparents and great-aunts or uncles, they may tell you something a little bit different if they came from places like Ireland, or if they came from places like Italy. They may have a totally different experience and actually lived through a time period where they didn't have that classification for a very long time, right? So these are some statistics that's important to understand. If you look at Congress, 90% of Congress is white. Governors in this country, about 96% who are classified as white. Top military advisors, 100%. President and vice president, 100%. Well, it's about to be, right? Current president and the cabinet, 91% white. People who decide which television shows we see, 93% white. So when it says the people who decide, we're talking about the groups of people who actually control these companies and determines what you actually see. People who decide which books we read, 90% white. People who decide which news is covered, 85% white. People who decide which music is produced. Even though you see some of these rich black artists that you think have some sense of control and power, 95% of them are being produced by people who are classified as white. Teachers, 83% white. Now, like I told you, my background is early childhood education. And as an early childhood educator, like, you rarely see a black male in that space at all. Rarely, right? And that's just talking about early childhood education. When you get into other different forms of education, you really don't see a lot of black professors who are in those kind of spaces. Full-time college professors, 84% white. Owners of men's football teams. And you can just keep going through all of those kind of statistics. Now, I have a question for all of you. How is it possible that you have the global minority, who has control over all of these institutions, organizations, businesses? How is that possible? Now, I'm gonna give you some of the things that people say. Some people believe that white people are just inherently more intelligent. So they're at the top simply because they're just naturally more intelligent. And there's some people that naturally believe that. That's a myth. Because there's all kinds of evidence to support that. Just because people are in control of these institutions or these resources or the economy, that it doesn't mean that they're the ones who are the most intelligent. You have some people who take it into a religious space and they say, well, you know, white people were just born closer to God. Have anybody ever studied like any of the Mormon traditions? Has anybody ever studied any of that? You'd be surprised about what they believe about my people, right? And why you really don't see a lot of black Mormons. Some Christians think the exact same thing, that the reason that black people are here is because they were cursed by Ham. And some people actually believe that. So in their mind, the reason that you may see people who are classified as white, who control all of these institutions and the economy and resources, is because they were naturally God-given that right. You have some people that believe that. Some people believe that black and brown people or people who are melanated are just not that intelligent. So you have to have other people who are more intelligent to control these things. What do you think the reason is?